getting my work done in northern Nigeria. We're going to talk about what's going on in Abuja and elsewhere, parts north, coming up on the Hot Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey everybody, Chuck Holton here. I am outside the offices of CBN Nigeria, and this is producer Austin. Wait, where'd you go? It's following my face, so it's hard to get you in the shot. Yeah. Austin's been a great help in getting interviews set up and making inquiries and stuff. Really appreciate what he's been doing to help me. We're going to run up to the CBN offices here and check it out before we get to work today. So here we go. All right, here we are at the CBN Africa offices, and they start every day with a devotion, a time of worship. Let's go check it out. I am just returning from an interview, or a kind of an off-the-record interview with a member of the Financial and Economic Crimes Commission here in Abuja, which is the capital of Nigeria. And we've been talking about cyber fraud, cyber crime. As many of you know, I've made reference before several times on the podcast to just some of the problems with romance scams, people that make fake profiles on dating websites and use them to scam primarily women, sometimes men, out of as much money as possible. And normally the difficulty with prosecuting that is that these people are, it's a matter of jurisdiction. If the criminal is not in the United States, then the FBI would have a hard time going after the criminal. And many times the countries where these criminals reside, it wouldn't even be a crime as long as you're not stealing money from someone inside that country. And so nations are struggling to evolve their legal systems to deal with this kind of transnational crime. And so just had a very interesting conversation with a member of the, like I said, Financial Crimes or Cyber Crime Division here in Abuja, and learned some very interesting things about him. One, first of all, in Nigeria, it is a crime to steal money, no matter if your victim is in Nigeria or not. And so somebody stealing from a poor, lonely woman in the United States would be prosecutable here in Nigeria for that crime. And in fact, the police here are very, according to this guy, very aggressively tracking down these kinds of criminals, especially the big ones. You have to understand that romance scams, while they're devastating for the victim, the woman involved who's lost her life savings or whatever, aside from the fact that it's a real big blow maybe to her ego, it's a difficult thing to stomach that you've been lied to and you thought this guy cared about you and really all he wanted was your money. But these guys, that in the greater scheme of things, those kinds of crimes are kind of small potatoes. When you're talking about dictators of countries that are stealing billions and billions of dollars from their people, the Financial and Economic Crimes Commission has much bigger fish to fry. That being said, they are prosecuting people when they can catch them for these kinds of romance scams. And in fact, they said they've arrested hundreds of people in the last year, so far this year, all around Nigeria, and those are just ones that have been prosecuted. And they have even recovered quite a bit of money and for the victims and given it back to the victims. So there actually is a process. If you've become a victim of a crime like this, you can actually file claim in Nigeria or file a petition in Nigeria, and that would give you the right to remuneration if they're able to catch the guy that did it. Obviously, tracking down the actual person who scammed you is going to be very difficult to do, but I know of lots of women who have done it successfully because they contact me and let me know that they've done it. Some of these victims happen to be ardent fans of the podcast, and so if you've done that, comment below. And maybe, let's just put it this way, there are whole Facebook pages devoted to helping you if you're a victim of this kind of crime. And all you have to do is just search romance scams on Facebook, and you can find pages devoted to those victims. And if you haven't been a victim, but you do engage in online dating, I think that's a great thing, and it really streamlines the process of finding a mate. However, you have to understand that there are literally millions of these fake profiles out there, and especially if you hear from somebody who says that they are deployed in the military or somehow working overseas, especially if you hear from somebody who is unwilling to do a face-to-face Skype call with you, and so that you can see his face and see that he is actually the person that has been portrayed. Don't accept any excuses. Oh, my camera doesn't work, my camera's broken, whatever. Don't accept any excuses for that. And for God's sake, never send money to someone online that you have not met personally. I know I'm asking for donations or subscriptions for the podcast. Obviously, many of you have never met me personally. And if you wonder about whether or not I'm scamming you, then don't send any money. But if you're getting something out of the podcast, then it's I'm not asking for a donation. I'm asking for you to participate in the podcast in some material way. Nevertheless, it was very interesting hearing from the side of the litigators or the law enforcement officers here in Nigeria about the steps that they're taking to try to, number one, get the word out and warn people, but number two, help to solve these crimes, prosecute those involved, and get the money back to the victims if they can find them. One of the things that stuck out was that he was talking about basically these guys are just real cowards, and the minute they find out that they've been caught, they immediately start begging to give the money back and just to stay out of jail, because they can. The law here in Nigeria says they can go to jail for up to 7 years. So that being the case, these guys don't want to spend 7 years in jail, and they're willing to give back their money. They call these kinds of scammers Yahoo boys, and they're apparently pretty common across Nigeria and indeed across Africa, and they're visible by that they usually spend any money that they get on massive amounts of bling, fancy cars, wristwatches, expensive clothing, things like that. They might even make enough money to buy a house, but when it's all said and done, they're ready to give all that back to avoid jail time. So if you've been a victim, there is hope, and we're going to talk more about it later on the podcast. So I walked down the road to do a little shopping, and I have to say, Nigerians are very friendly people. It's kind of interesting because they speak very proper English. So proper that it's almost hard for Americans to understand. It's almost like, British royal language or something. And they're obviously very big on their self-image. They have a good self-image, I think, compared to some cultures I've seen in Africa. And So anyway, I'm having a good time doing my shopping, and I'm heading back to the hotel now before it gets dark. The best of two worlds, right there. So, how much are these things? Yeah, how much do they cost?
Drops.
Yeah?
Drops.
Drop. I don't understand. Like, how much money? I don't know. Okay. All right. Oh, I'm just trying to find out how much they cost. Like, say the ShopRite?
ShopRite. ShopRite. Is it ShopRite?
Yeah.
ShopRite center apa? No laka mas. Drop. ShopRite na ako. No baka drop. No, aku magana mana.
600.
How much?
Okay, and so how old are you? How old are you? How old is he?
Old.
How many years does he have?
Go on.
No. How old is he?
No, just only.
I'm 50.
Only you just go.
No. I just want to know how old he is. He looks very young.
Okay, is the boy?
Very young.
This one,
15. All right. Big man. Good. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So I just went and talked to those people there about those little taxi motorcycle things. We would call them tuk-tuks in other places, but I don't know what they're called here. I think they're just called tricycles or something. But anyway, like that one that just went by me. So it's roughly $2 to take a ride, like probably a 15 or 20 minute ride across town. So fairly cheap, but the kid driving it couldn't have been 16 years old. I asked him, and he said he was 15. So maybe he was, and maybe he wasn't. But I don't know if I want a 15-year-old driving me around. But anyway, fascinating stuff. That's Africa. So I'm back in my hotel room, and one of the things I like to do when I travel around the world is check out different kinds of drinks, because there's just a mind-boggling array of drinks that you can find that you just don't see in the United States. This one is called Vitae Milk, and it doesn't really look that good, but I thought I should try it at least just to say I did. So here goes. Yeah. It tastes like milk made from corn, maybe. Like the residue left over after eating corn pops. So it's not terrible. It's not as sweet as that, though. It's a little, yeah. All right, so Vitae Milk. I give it about a 4.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.